So first of all, I guess what I would really like to do is to sort of talk you through the initial assessment process. So during the pandemic and obviously during the lockdown, we were conducting a number of remote assessments, which is quite challenging to do because you can see the person on a video, but it's quite hard to gain all the information that you may want from them if you're looking at a sit to stand task. So we developed something called GPS, which I'll talk to you about in a moment. What I'm going to ask Trish to do is just to come back and take a seat in the chair for me, because what I want to go through is just look with you how we would conduct our sort of assessment. Now, this doesn't have to just be remote. This could be the assessment process that we will take with any individual when we are looking at doing a sit to stand task with them. So whether that be with a return or a quick move, or even to an extent working with a stand aid as well. You'll hear me reference something called power, balance and stamina through the afternoon. That is really key, because we do we focus a lot around power, balance and stamina with the individual themselves, because it can really help. You'll have to excuse me, my mask is slipping off as I'm speaking to you. Power, balance and stamina can really help guide us down to the type of product solution that might be best suited to Trish, depending on how she is with that power, balance and stamina. So we'll have a little look at that. What we're trying to do with the initial assessment is also gauge what Trish's functional ability is as well. So we do quite a lot of work with the functional independence measure. I'm sure a lot of you will be very familiar with that, but we sort of work alongside that too. So hopefully that will come through. As I said, any questions, we have information relating to FIM on our website as well, if you wanted to sort of just update yourself with that. So from the GPS side of things, and this is what I would tend to call my core skill really when we're looking at working with sit to stand. One of the first things that I'll want to understand from Trish, if we're going in to see her and we're looking to do a sit to stand, is one of the first things I want to know is, can Trish just sit forward in the chair for me? So even just leaning forward. So just leaning forward, back away from the chair. And I want to know that, can she sort of sit and maintain good core, maintain balance and maintain her core in that sort of position. That's one of the first things that I'll be looking at, because if the individual can't sit forward for me, then we're challenged right away, because this is going to mean then that maybe potentially working with a stand assistive device is not going to be the right thing for this individual. You can take a seat back again for me if you like for a moment, Trish. Next thing, if we're working down, what I then want to understand from Trish is, can she reach across her midline? So I'll often ask if they can just reach across. What I'm really looking for here is actually some rotation in the shoulders, some rotation in the upper body. So they're reaching across, because this then, if Trish leans to her left hand side as well, is de-weighting and will allow that hip to come forward a lot easier. So I'm looking to see if she can reach across her midline, but what I'm looking for is that rotation of the shoulder, really. And I'll come back to that in a moment with you. And then if you can do the same on both sides for me, so I'd get them to see how that shoulder rotates here as well. So that's what I'm looking for, because now, if I needed to come in and assist Trish forward in the chair, actually coming here and helping just to guide the hip forward becomes really quite easy to do. But this is the key. It's that upper body rotation that is so important. Thank you, Trish. You can come back to a straight position again. Next thing I want to look at is lower limbs. So I want to understand, has Trish got power in her limbs to be able to conduct that push and coming up and into standing? So one of the things that I might ask her to do then is just to lift her left foot off the floor and extend her leg, and then can she flex her toes as well too? And then if you can do the same with the other leg for me as well too, Trish. Great, good. Now, if she holds that there, we could go a step further. We could even just ask if she can resist that movement, pushing down as well too. And that will indicate that she has got good power here, good muscle activity. And then you can lower that down. If you're struggling with somebody extending their legs out because it's hard for them to do, even if you just pop your own hand now just on your thigh, and if you push your foot into the floor, you'll probably feel your quads activating. Something else that I will check to make sure that we've got some muscle activation here, but if I can't get somebody to extend their leg at all, I'm more likely to suggest that we maybe need to get the physio to come down and see Trish before we actually do a sit to stand. Those parts I would conduct nearly all the time if I'm going in to see an or do an assessment on somebody with sit to stand, because bear in mind I might be going into people that I don't know and that I've maybe seen for the first time. If you know your clients really well and you know that they can weight bear, then you may not need to go to this extent every time, but it's a good thing to get into, because it can help guide you down what they need, what support and help they might need to one position forward in the chair. The GPS side of this is G stands for grip, P for push, and S is for shuffle. And what I want to understand from Trish is that can she just grip the arm of the chair? So can she just grip here? I can see that she can do that. Of course, if we're doing this remotely, we can't see how much power the person has, but at least we can see if she can grip. Sometimes I might even ask them if they can just grip around their own wrist so that you can actually visually see them doing that as well. That works quite nicely. Why is that important? Because if I'm going to be using something like the ReTurn for Trish to come up into standing with, I need to know that she can hold on to the ladder of the frame. That's not necessary all the time, because I've got people that will work with this where they may just place their arms over the top here to then bring themselves into standing. But grip, quite key. The push, this is where I want to again check her power. So really I'm just looking to see now, can Trish just push her bottom off the seat? She doesn't have to come right into standing. I just want to ascertain, can she push up, and can you just hold it there for a second, and then you can sit back down for me. So I just want to understand, can she do that initial pushing up and into standing? And that's quite key also when we're looking at sit to stand, obviously. And then the third thing is where we will combine that and then look at shuffle. And shuffle is where we then want Trish, if she can for me, just to shuffle forward to the edge of the chair. Perfect. Okay, and I'll come back in a moment and talk about how key this is when we are looking at doing the sit to stand. Now, the next thing that we may want to look at then is feet position. Now, quite often people there are many different ways, or there are different ways in which people will work with feet positions when we're looking at sit to stand. Often we might work with what we might call an offset base of support, so you have one foot slightly behind the other, and that gives you nice support and balance moving forward and backwards. Some people might just have a wider base of support, so they've just got a wider, more stable base of support. For me, when I'm working with somebody, maybe working with them for the first time, I just ask them if they can put their feet wherever is comfortable for them, because I don't want to undo how they may have adapted their base of support for themselves to come into standing. If I'm struggling with somebody and we're struggling with getting them into standing, that is then when I may look at what can we do to adapt their base of support that may help them, either give them better balance or better stability when they are then coming up and into standing. So that's probably the last thing I would look at, but I do want to make sure that their feet aren't too close together, because that obviously has a big impact on balance and stability when the person comes up and into standing. So then the next thing, if I'm working with Trish alone without equipment, you can hopefully see that Trish has got a nice posture in the chair here. She's not too far forward in the chair either. And quite often, when I see people working with stand assistive devices, even doing an assisted sit to stand, I tend to find that what can happen, and I'll show you how I would come in, so hopefully you've got quite a nice angle that you'll be able to see here. I would come in facing diagonally across Trish this way. My right arm would come down behind her towards her right hip. And then my left arm would just sit on her shoulder here. Now what can happen, I've kept Trish in quite a nice upright position here, but sometimes people will come in and literally move the person forward to get them ready to come into standing. Now you can relax for a second, Trish. I'd like you to try this yourself. If you're sat at home or in the office, and bear in mind I can see you all on the video, I said this morning, and I'll catch you out if you don't do it. But if you try sitting in a position where you're ready to come into standing and then lean forward a little bit too much, stop and then try and stand and see how it feels, because I think you'll probably find that it actually becomes a little bit harder to do. And what you have to do is start thinking about standing, which should actually be an innate response. You should just be able to come forward and come into standing. So I like to keep people in a more upright position, and then what we then do is we get that momentum of coming forward and then the continuation into standing all in one movement. So if you do it, Trish, you come forward and then stand, and you can take a seat again for me, Trish. Equally, if you're sat at home now or sat in your chair, sitting in the back of the chair, try standing up without moving forward or without moving your head forward, and just see how difficult that becomes. And it's do not fall over when you're trying to do that, but it's really hard to do. So when we're looking at moving and handling, a lot of the time we talk about the head leading the activity, and it is really key. But it's the trunk that really needs to lead the activity also. So the fact that we've got the trunk moving, especially when I'm working with people with cognitive impairment who are struggling to follow directions or instructions, somebody with dementia maybe, if we can guide them into that movement, it's more fluid, and you can tend to find it becomes a lot easier to help get that person into standing if we get that little bit of momentum when they're coming into standing. I will often get people to exercise when they're working with sit to stand, just because trying to stand somebody when they've not been moving at all and maybe being sat for an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours maybe sometimes, just getting them to lean from side to side, just de-weighting a little bit, that can be really useful, because actually that's great, because if they can de-weight, that will help them to move their hip forward in the chair a little bit. Just getting them to sit back in the chair, just relax back in the chair, just popping their hands on their thighs and just reaching down towards their knees and then back again as well. Just getting them used to coming forward, and then again just lifting side to side is a nice one. And again, even just getting people just to lift their feet off the ground, just doing exactly that. Just little simple exercises, especially if their joints are stiff as well too, and it can have such a big impact on that person's ability then to come into standing. I have a few different techniques and solutions that I will use in relation to helping somebody to come forward in the chair if we're struggling to get the person to come forward. One of the key things, as I said just now though, is getting the person to sit forward. That is really important. But then it's this upper body, this trunk movement, the upper body, rotation of the shoulders, which is the thing that will really help you to get somebody forward in the chair. And have lots of little things that we can do to support that. We just don't have time to show you everything here this afternoon.